Well, hello. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I think that when I joined VMware, the team who put together this event was the first one that reached out to me as far as me being able to speak there. Dankjewel. In the long tradition of login consultants, bringing beer to Brian on stage. The very first BRI Forum in 2005 in Washington, D.C., I was giving the closing session, and Jeroen van de Kamp of Login walked down and handed me a Heineken and said, "This is how you do a presentation." So, to Jeroen and Login and everyone else here from Netherlands for putting these events together, thank you very much. Cheers. All right, this is why I use a handheld microphone, because if you don't have enough hands, you just have to drink the beer. So my name is Brian, and I work for VMware. Sounds weird. I come from Ohio originally, which is sort of that part of the United States. Ohio is known for two things, really. The first is farming. Specifically corn, and the second is American football, specifically the Ohio State Buckeyes. Now, you may wonder what a Buckeye is. This is a Buckeye. It's the state tree of Ohio. It has that kind of leaf and that kind of flower. We are not a creative people from Ohio, so we have a state tree named the Buckeye. Let's call our football team the Buckeyes. You need a mascot? It's a giant Buckeye. So this is the Buckeye leaf and the Buckeye nut. And then as the players do good things throughout the year, they get a sticker that goes on their helmet that's a Buckeye sticker. So it's a sticker that looks like this. You notice I have this sticker on my laptop. I have this sticker on my phone. I want to be very clear. This is a Buckeye sticker. This is a Buckeye leaf. This is not a Buckeye leaf. Different things. So to be very clear, when people see my laptop and they're like, welcome to Netherlands, I'm like, okay. So that's where I came from originally. I now live in New York, right about there. I'm not there currently. So my background, I guess you all probably know, there's a website, brianmadden.com. I do not work there anymore. This website I did a long time with my best friend and my brother, Gabe Knuth and Jack Madden. So this is Gabe and me and Jack together in 1999. So we've been working together a long time. Gabe currently is working at FS Logix. Jack is the executive editor of brianmadden.com. And of course, I am here now. So we've been doing that for a long time, brianmadden.com. I have the books that I was involved in. We did the BRI Forum conference. This is the theater from Washington, D.C. with the beer. And that all led up to this tweet. After 21 years, I'm leaving the IT industry and brianmadden.com. Gabe Knuth and Jack Madden will continue. Funny, it's 29th of June. 2016, so that's like almost exactly 2 years ago. So I announced I was leaving brianmadden.com and leaving the IT industry back then. And the first question everyone asks me now is, what did you do in your time off? I can summarize it pretty much with this slide. I bought this thing. It's a Fiat Ducato. We call it a Ram ProMaster in the US, but it's a Fiat Ducato sort of camper van. Spent some time driving around the US. I stopped shaving and actually had a decent beard. It's more white than I was expecting. Yeah, little kids, it's darn close. Oh, it's Santa Claus, yeah. I don't have presents for you. Have some Fusion licenses. But my calendar, it was nice. Here is my March calendar. I was unemployed all the way through March of this year. This is my March agenda. Not too shabby. So then April happened, and I tweeted this. After some much needed rest and relaxation, I'm officially back in EUC full-time, having just accepted a job at VMware, working in the EUC CTO's office with Sean Bass and team. Very excited. So this is April. By the way, the date here, I started on the beginning of April, April 1st. This date is April 2nd, because if I tweeted on April 1st that I was joining VMware, I don't think anyone would believe that. So you saw my March schedule. You saw April. So that leads us to May. Here's my May schedule. Red is travel. You can see Palo Alto, and that's fine. This is my actual real schedule. I think I was with you in here. And so anyway, so I spent a lot of time talking to people. In May alone, I had 25 customer meetings. I gave 16 speeches, and I flew 50,000 miles. I actually just had my 25th customer meeting today, this month. So I'm really sort of staying out there and really talking to people. So that sort of gets to my job at VMware. So I work at VMware, and the way that I ended up at VMware was, I did the van thing. I ended up in New York, where I live now, and at the sort of beginning of this year, I knew that I wanted to, start working again, of course, and I knew I wanted to stay in EUC, but I wanted to try working for a vendor because I felt before, as BrianMadden.com, it was really awesome, but I was sort of an outsider looking in. And I thought it'd be really cool to maybe actually be able to shape the industry and shape the direction a little bit. But I really wanted to keep on doing what I had been doing, which is traveling around the world and talking to people and giving presentations and doing podcasts and blogs and all those kind of things. So I thought, if I'm going to do this, I want to do this for a cool company. So I emailed people who I knew at Amazon, at Google. I thought maybe Microsoft was cool now, and was talking to them about various jobs. And so I went very far down the path with Amazon. And I thought I was going to get a job working for Amazon Web Services, doing workspaces and all that sort of thing. And so I got pretty far down that path. And then in February, I was at a conference for iGel, or like eGel, you might pronounce it here, the thin client maker. And Sean Bass was there. So, and if you don't know Sean Bass, he is he's our EUC CTO. I've known Sean for a long time, and I said, oh, let's have dinner. I'd love to catch up and basically tell you about this new job at Amazon I'm going to get. And so we go to dinner. It's great, have a lot of fun, and because he was independent, and what do you think about working for a big company? What do you think about, working for a vendor, advice, that kind of thing. So that's a good time. The next morning, he texts me and says, I got to ask, I'm just doing my job, would you consider VMware EUC? For your next job. And I texted back something to the effect of, no thanks, I'm good. And he goes, okay, I won't bug you again about this, but I think what we're doing in the EUC space is actually pretty interesting, and you should take a look. And of course, as I said, I've known him for a long time, and I'm gonna sort of take a look and see how it is. You know the ending of the story. I'm standing here now. And so what I want to talk about is what it was that I liked about what VMware is doing in the EUC space and why I ended up joining VMware. Specifically, so my job now is actually working for Sean. And if you've ever seen him speak, I can tell you that his brain runs at the same speed as his mouth, which is very quickly. He's a really smart guy and a great boss, and we've known each other for a long time. And so my job, I think he says, go out in the world and do your thing, and go be you and write the stories and do the blogs and talk about technology. So that's really awesome. So it's because of Sean and sort of the community we have around this. And this is I was looking for the oldest picture of Sean that I could find. This is the first Citrix CTP meeting in Fort Lauderdale from 2006. So there's Rick Mack, me, there's Jeroen Vendekamp, Rick Dellinger, Ron Oglesby, Jeff Pitch, Doug Brown, and Sean. I just want to be very clear to say that, yes, I have frosted tips. Again, the year was 2006. This was 13 years ago, so this is how things worked back then. But yeah, so obviously, you join a company for more than one person. But Sean's the one who said, "Look, take a look at what we have and see what you think." And it's interesting because, in the EUC space, there's all this talk now about digital workspace and like workplace transformation and all these kind of, everything that everyone's working on, virtualization and mobile devices and all that. And for me, all this stuff is great, but I think that as an industry, we're getting too far ahead of ourselves and forgetting kind of where we came from. Because, you can talk about all the desktop virtualization and mobile devices you want, but the reality is, like 90% of us are still using laptops with an OS that's installed locally. Sure, more of them maybe now today are Mac than they were a few years ago, but really the vast majority of devices that organizations are dealing with are laptops running Windows and Mac. And I feel like, for years, Citrix and VMware focused a lot on, this mobility and single sign-on and, desktop, VDI versus RDSH and all these kinds of things, but didn't really think a lot about, don't worry about all those Windows laptops that are out there. And I think that's really where this industry came from, because if you look at how we got to where we are today as an EUC industry, we have to take a step back and kind of like rewind the clock to the beginning of the story. So in the beginning, this happened. And then, so that's fine. We were no problem so far. We had dinosaurs after a while. After that, we had humans. Once humans came along, they started organizing and working in offices. Then the computer showed up. And pretty much once one computer showed up, then lots of computers showed up. And if you were to take the sort of desktop strategy, end-user computing strategy that an organization had, I can really summarize 20 years of strategy with this one photograph. And this is, you call Dell or you call HP and you say, yeah, just give me another pallet full of laptops. We used to joke that we always asked them for a pallet full of their second cheapest laptops, because, we always thought that the business computers is just like bottles of wine at a restaurant where, you don't want to be that jerk who buys the cheapest ones, but it's kind of all the same, really. So we order, a pallet full of the second cheapest laptops they have, and we bring them in. And what do? We image them. You take it out of the box, put our image on it. We deploy them to our users. After some time, we update the applications that were on that image. We patch the version of Windows on it. More time passes, we update the applications on that image, and we patch the version of Windows on it, and we update them, and we patch them, and we update them, and we patch them, and then eventually we say, fuck it, we re-image them because they've drifted so much from the original standard, and then we update them, and we patch them, until eventually we retire that device. We call Dell or HP and get another forklift pallet full of machines that we image and we deploy. And this is it. If any of you sitting here have been doing EUC maybe for, say, 5 years or less, and you feel like you don't know the full history, you're caught up. This is 1995 through 2012. You are now caught up with everything you need to know about how life was back then. Now, we look at this and we said, there has to be a better way. And, we have to improve upon this. And Microsoft actually helped us do this with a product called the Systems Management Server, which came out, by the way, in 1994. That was a long, long time ago. That's older than VMware. I started the industry in 1995. SMS was already there's already old versions of SMS at that point. And here's the thing about SMS. Do you ever hear these analogies about the person who invented the car, 100 years ago, and it's so forward-thinking, and they say, wow, how did you have the vision? They talk about market research. What market research did you do? And whoever invented the car, there's quotes, depending on what country you're from, it's either Henry Ford or Carl Benz or from Holland. There's always someone, every country has the same version where it basically says, when you invented the car, that's so forward-thinking because I couldn't ask users what they wanted. If I asked a user what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. They wouldn't have said a car because they couldn't envision that. Well, this is your faster horse. Microsoft Systems Management Server in no way changed the game. The circle still happened. I guess it goes this way. The circle still happened. It just happened. It just happened faster. It allows us to centrally manage machines and centrally push out patches and centrally update everything. But at no point does it actually change anything. So again, even after SMS came out in 1994, 95, 96, 97, 98, nothing's changing. We're just doing that circle even faster and faster. The real game changer, to be honest, didn't happen until the late 90s when this came along. Who knows this image right here? WinFrame, also known as Flying Angled Briefcase Man, who's actually, this is the Flying Angled Briefcase Man's in the upper corner. This is something that, this is Citrix WinFrame, MetaFrame, this is their marketing branding of the late 90s. And when WinFrame and MetaFrame first came out, this was an actual game changer for desktop management. Because the idea is we just installed our applications once, and all the users could connect. I remember my first time using WinFrame, I was able to update an application in one place, and all 15 users on that server were instantly updated. I mean, this was absolutely game-changing. In the late 90s, WinFrame and MetaFrame was better than the old way of doing things. This was the first true game changer when it came to desktop management. And yes, there are some stories about remote access and maybe changes to security and things like that. But really, at this time, it was about a better way to manage Windows applications and Windows desktops. And that was fine. We rolled along a little bit at that, and it went on for some years until we got to these people who came along. So this is the oldest VMware website I could find. VMware apparently was founded in 1998 because we just celebrated our 20th anniversary. This website I think is from '99. Look at VMware 2.0 for Windows NT. Who's using VMware SAP? So VMware comes along, and they had this general idea, which could be summarized via this slide, which is, hey, let's just virtualize everything as much as we can. And it's interesting because, VMware adoption in the data center was so fast. I mean, think about this in your own lives. Most of us sitting here went from VMware, never heard of it, to VMware, 99% of our servers are running it in like 2 years. A very, very fast time frame. And of course, once all of the servers of the world were virtualized, they sort of like ran out of things to sell. And it's like, oh, what's all this? We have all these physical desktops out there. Oh, we can virtualize those too. We'll call that VDI. It's a game changer or something. And we're very aggressively pushing that. And how did that work out? Did not end well. So we had some issues. And frankly, this is what led me to write this book, The VDI Delusion. This book I wrote in 2012, 6 years ago. The book, The VDI Delusion, Why Desktop Virtualization Failed to Live Up to the Hype, and What the Future Enterprise Desktop Will Really Look Like. The premise of this book, do you know this word? Premise? Not the premises of this book. The premise of this book, different words. The premise of this book was, VDI wasn't bad. It's just the idea that VDI represents the future of enterprise computing, the future of the end user computing. I didn't believe it. And the problem was, in those days, think about the computing landscape back when VDI sort of first came out. In your desktop computer, you had a quad-core processor, or you had actually probably like dual quad-core processors. You had a GPU with some, crazy graphics. You had a giant high-definition display, or probably two giant high-definition displays, like 3D sound, web camera, all sorts of peripherals. This is what the desktop computer was when VDI came out. So this is the desktop. So what's VDI? Well, it's 8 cores per user. No, we're putting 8 users on 1 core. So it's really 1/8 of a core per user. Display, yeah, we got a display. Sound, boop, we got sound. And people are saying like, well, hey, VDI is cheaper. Well, it fucking better be. But the problem is the users at home had a transformer, and VDI was a GoBot. I don't even know if they had GoBots in Netherlands. I think you're caught up. We had GoBots. I can describe it like this. I'm a car, I'm a robot. I'm a car, I'm a robot. We also had LA Gear Airs, while our friends had Nike Airs. Same concept. So VDI, during that era, it was a different product than what a desktop computing was. Now, we had some things on our side that were going for us, specifically this guy. So this is Gordon Moore. You all know Moore's Law, which is, there's a lot of different interpretations of what Moore's Law actually was originally. You can summarize it by saying computers get faster and cheaper. That's pretty much it. And so that led to the next sort of book that I wrote called The New VDI Reality. The New VDI Reality, I wrote 2 years later and said how the biggest barriers to VDI adoption have finally been solved and what this means for the future of the enterprise desktop. How many people read this book? Look around. Ruben, 2. How many people know the VDI delusion? It should be more of you, but it's still 3 times as many. The point is, no one bought this book. The VDI delusion, lots of people bought that book. It was hardcover. It was the title. It was pretty hardcore, VDI, meh. And this one's like, oh, it's actually better now. And people were like, I'm not interested. But what I wrote was that, VDI really was solved, the VDI sort of challenge was solved not because of any brilliant moves the VDI vendors did, honestly. It more was solved because of Moore's Law, and computers just finally got faster. Because the problem was, original VDI, it wasn't that we couldn't make it perform that well. It's that we had to spend so much money per user to make good performing VDI. It never made financial sense. So VDI performed poorly because by the time we cut the cost down to be manageable, there wasn't very much left capacity-wise. But a couple years of Moore's Law, and we had better and faster storage and better and faster memory, and the storage optimization in terms of single instance block level storage and memory sharing and all this kind of stuff. So even a couple years later, VDI got pretty decent. Again, I'm still not saying that VDI is the future, but I'm saying that someone saying that VDI is a real solution for real-world problems, 6, 7, 8 years ago was a hard pill to swallow. And then even as recently as 3 or 4 years ago, I said, yeah, no, VDI is actually legit. It actually does what it's supposed to do. So we got there with VDI. And by the way, so we got VDI, we have RDSH as our 2 flavors of desktop virtualization. Citrix was doing RDSH forever, added VDI. VMware was doing VDI forever, added RDSH. After some time, they both got to have decent products, and we felt pretty good. We love high fives. in the US. So we make VDI or RDSH in our data center. We're high-fiving each other because like it's actually working now. Let's go out and have some beers to celebrate. We leave the data center and we walk by all these desktops and laptops, which are neither VDI nor RDSH. And we're like, oh shit, this is actually kind of a big hole in our solution. And it's interesting because when you get a new Windows desktop, you take it out of the box and turn it on. When you build the best VDI environment in the world, a user connects, fires it up. The best RDSH, a user fires it up. What do all three of these have in common? They're all about Windows and the Windows desktop. I mean, think about this. The best VDI in the world, if you do it right, feels like a regular Windows desktop, which you also get from the first time you power on a Windows computer after taking it out of the box. So this is not a business solution right here. This is just Windows. You know, how do we convert this into the platform that companies use? Well, we have a little task list. We have to figure out application installation and virtualization and image building and licensing and group policy and printing and antivirus and desktop security and logon scripts and profiles and GPOs and 32-bit applications and 64-bit environments and all the Windows versions and all this stuff. This is how we convert that blank Windows desktop into something that our users can actually use within our company. And of course, what's interesting about this is this applies to Windows regardless of how we're delivering Windows. This applies to VDI, this applies to RDSH, this applies to Windows traditional physical desktops and laptops. And we were okay with this. I mean, we've been dealing with this kind of stuff, like I said, for 20 years. So it was okay, but this is something we had to deal with sort of regardless. So we have three different form factors of Windows now. We have the VDI, RDSH, and our Windows physical laptops and desktops. So we're managing Windows horizontally across all of these. And of course, these are separate stacks in the back end. VDI and RDSH, this all for us is Citrix, XenApp, and XenDesktop for most of the world. Some of the world is doing it with VMware Horizon. But the Windows physical, for the most part, is SCCM. Maybe there's RMM, there's LANDesk, there's a new one today, Radii. Did I get that right? Are you all still here? So there's other ways of doing that. But, you know, these are separate. We're not using the same products to manage both of these environments. And that's fine. I mean, you know, we have, okay, it's two different silos. I can manage two different silos. You know, I used SMS and Citrix at the same time in the 1990s. This is okay. So we're really feeling pretty good about ourselves in this environment. Like, yes, I got this. I can manage it. And then this asshole came along. And all the users were like, oh, hello. And IT was a little bit, you know, when the IT's first reaction is sort of the, and then the users were like, oh, by the way, we want to start using this at work, and we sort of evolved a little bit more. And they're like, and you have to make our applications work on it too. And our emojis sort of, not our favorite. So it's really tough because the problem is a user walks in with this thing into the environment and it's like, make this work. Or it wasn't even that. Like we had Android in that time. Remember Windows Phone was a thing back then. But by the way, there's some people I know here who know Benny. Benny Tritch still uses a Windows Phone. I just want to put that on record. It's 2018, June 28th, 2018. Benny Tritch uses a Windows Phone. All right. But anyway, so these things walk into the environment, and it's like, oh, hey, please, we have to use this. And we're like, well, how do we deal with end users? We have a Windows desktop. I mean, the Windows desktop is how we package up, it's how we provision applications, it's how we set up their environment, the settings, the registry keys, the security, it's all that kind of stuff. It's the same thing we do for VDI, as we do for RDSH, as we do for physical Windows. So, all right, you walk in with this thing and we want to manage it. Can we do this? Yeah, I think so. Bing, there you go. Oh wait, you want Android? Bing, Windows, bing. We can handle this. This is fine. This is what we knew. And here's the thing. My company, my current employer, actually stood on stage in front of like 25,000 people with a picture very similar to this, and it's like, ta-da! As did Citrix. I mean, this is all we knew. I don't blame. I mean, I don't know if it's why the picture of the VDI delusion is a hammer pounding in a screw. It's what we knew. So this obviously wasn't what users wanted. Users wanted to use the native capabilities of the device, and the native applications, the native ways of launching, the not panning and scrolling and zooming and all this kind of stuff. So they want to use the native capabilities of the device, but we didn't want to let them use the native capabilities because we didn't really know how to lock it down. Because really, if a user walks in and says, "I have this new device I want to use," I'm like, okay, well, this is how I manage devices. I make them mine. I mean, SCCM is based on domain joins, which, a domain, they're based on I'm controlling this device. It's in my domain. I have domain admin rights. You do not. I can do whatever I want to your device, such as lock it down, prevent you from installing things, remove things that shouldn't be there. That's how I manage things. So when someone brings in a new device, and I say, oh, the easy way to do that is I lock it down. And that's how we solve that. Here's the problem. Phones are small. So when IT locked down the phone, the user's like, yeah, that's cool, you can lock that down, and I'll just bring in this one. This is why phones come in 2 colors, so you can tell them apart. And so how did this work for organizations? It worked as well as you expected. Like, this image pretty much sums up everything perfectly. Give it a minute. This is mobile device security. When you try to lock down a phone, users don't even mind. The fact that you can lock down a phone and no one complains should be your first sign that something you've got a problem there somewhere. And of course, over time, we as the industry got better at this. At the time we had mobile device management, which was locking down devices. That turned into mobile application management, which is sort of locking down just the applications that we need and deploying certain applications while letting users do the other things. All this evolved into enterprise mobility management. And there's whole other presentations and books about all this. But the point is that over time, IT eventually figured out how to deal with mobile devices using EMM software. So if I go back to our drawing from before, we have Windows VDI and RDSH that we're managing with Citrix or VMware. We have Windows Physical that we're managing with SCCM. Now we're just adding iOS and Android into that picture. And we're managing this with AirWatch or Zen Mobile or Mobile Iron or Maz 360 or Intune or SODI or Ivanti or Symantec has like 4 different solutions, whichever one it's going to be. So again, our picture is becoming more complex, but we're kind of doing best of breed for each one of these platforms, and we feel like it's okay. And frankly, when this happened, when iOS and Android came into the picture, we were okay with separate platforms because we're like, what's the alternative? It's the future of Windows. I mean, what is really the future of Windows? When we started asking, we were reading all these things like the keyboard is dead, or we are living in a post-PC world, or the desktop is dead. These are all the headlines, which really are, like, come on, let's be honest. These are all just euphemisms for saying, we think Windows is dead, right? So, how much longer is this going to be a problem, really? And we have data to back it up, Windows usage worldwide, boom, real data. You're welcome. Of course, there's a problem with this data. There's no axes, there's no labels on this chart. We show the labels, boom. It goes from 90 to 95% over 4 years. So to be very clear, this chart is not a lie, technically speaking. It is pretty highly misleading. If I unfuck this chart and have a proper scale, there's what it really looks like. So, and if you even look at the numbers behind the data, Windows PC and laptop sales in 2006, there's 240 million sold. Actually, 2016, We sold 270 million. Everyone, Microsoft, so the number went up. Maybe its market share goes down because there's now more OSs and devices that didn't exist, but the actual raw number of units is going up. In fact, Michael Dell, amazing human being, love him very much. Michael Dell tweeted, since the post-PC era started, 3.6 billion PCs have been sold. Pretty good post-era. I bet more products wish for same. Now, post-PC era. And I've been talking about like the future of Windows. I've used this slide for 20 years, I think. In this world, I know 3 things that will exist. Hostess Twinkies, as the rumor, as an American chemical product that they are, will have no problem surviving a nuclear attack. Twinkies, cockroaches, and of course, devices running the Microsoft Windows operating system. So I have no doubt that Windows will be around for a long time. In fact, it's funny, you think about all this like post-apocalyptic survival tools, you don't need a zombie dagger or a farming ability, you just need an MCSE, and I think you're good to go. Of course, this is generally speaking in the world. A lot of people say, but it's different in the enterprise. And I say, is it? I mean, think about this. How many Windows apps do you have in your environment? 100, 200, I don't know, 500? Let's say as a matter of conversation, you've got 400 apps. So we have Windows because we have Windows applications. If you don't want Windows, you have to first get rid of the Windows applications. If you have 400 apps, how is that going to work exactly? Let's say you can migrate 1 app per month off of Windows, which, by the way, that's crazy. Because migrating an app off of Windows means you have to look at all the alternatives. You have to evaluate them and see if they're going to work for your needs. You have to figure out some data migration strategy. You have to retrain your users. You have to retrain your IT staff. And then you need to do that again and again and again and again. And by the way, I told you I've been using that Windows is dead slide for 20 years. That is not a joke. Like Windows has been dying for 20 years. 20 years ago, Windows is dead, we're going to Java. A few years later, Windows is dead, we're going to .NET. A few years later, Windows is dead, we're going to Ajax. A few years later, Windows is dead, we're going to mobile. Windows is dead, we're going to AWS. Windows has been dying for a very long time. And every time Windows is dying, there's a big initiative. Oh, we have to move our apps off of Windows. Well, if Windows has been dying for 20 years, I got news for you. Any applications that were actually kind of easy to move off Windows, you already did that. It's 2018. Any Windows apps you have today are the son of a bitch applications that are really, really difficult to move off Windows. If it was easy to do, you would have done it already. So as I said, even moving an app a month is crazy, but if you could even move an app a month, how long are we talking about? This is still 33 years to move off of Windows. I don't know about y'all. This is not our future. You want a glimpse of our future, man. This is our future. Because we're going to be in this casket very much before Windows is. Microsoft Windows will be fine. So I think as we're thinking about EUC today, we have to consider Windows applications and what that means for our organizations. So if I go back to my environment, I've got Windows VDI, RDSH, I've got Windows Physical. Oh, by the way, it's 2018. It's not just Windows Physical. I've got Mac OS that finds their way into organizations, and even people who say, "Oh, we don't support Macs." Oh, that's cool. So you got no Macs in here. Well, I mean, like this executive has it in this department and this thing. Oh, but you don't support. Well, we don't support it, but like we go fix it if it breaks, and like we update it and stuff. And but we block it from our network on Mac update, Mac OS update day. And so, I think there's so many people who, like in VMware, you can pick your own device and probably 3/4 of us use Macs. So that's becoming more of a thing. Chrome OS is becoming a thing as well. And Chrome OS is interesting because before my van trip, I only knew Chrome, like Chromebooks from education. It was like a 200 euro, like hard plastic, super cheap sort of device. And now that I've joined VMware, a lot of my coworkers are actually using Chromebooks as their real everyday laptop. Now, I want to be very clear. There's a Chromebooks, and then there's Chromebooks. These ones they're using are like the Google Pixel 2 or whatever, that group Pixelbook 2, whatever that is. This is a pretty nice device. It's costing 1,000 euros to start. It's shiny and metallic and super thin and high definition display and backlit keyboard and very large trackpad. It's a very nice device. But Chromebooks are entering, and I'll tell you why. The reason Chromebooks are entering is because it's a stateless OS with a laptop form factor. And when I mention stateless OS, we've been supporting stateless OS, like iOS and Android, part of our estate are stateless OS. When I say stateless, I mean, I don't, like, sure, you power it off and power it back on, it remembers what you had installed, but you're not imaging an iPhone. There's no such thing. You can reinstall the OS, you can factory reset it, you could upgrade or downgrade the OS, but you put the applications on afterwards as their self-contained bubbles. You put the management profile as self-contained bubble, the user settings as a self-contained bubble. You can add and remove apps at any time, and the device doesn't get slower and slower over time. You don't have to rebuild an iPhone every 2 years. Well, you don't own one that long, so I guess that's why. We just rather just pay $1,000 for a new one. But the point is, but Chrome OS is stateless, but it's also a laptop. And people say, what's your point? Like, who cares? Like, no one's buying a Chromebook because it's stateless. Like regular users don't care about a stateless device. I say, don't they? How many people do you see with iPad Pros? You have an iPad Pro, a keyboard magnet attached to it with a flip-out other little thing to hold it up like a laptop, and a pencil that sticks in the side like a fang. And users walk around with this ridiculous contraption because that's how much they want a laptop that is stateless. Some people say, well, no, that's not true. I use it because you can touch the screen. Yeah, you can touch Windows now too. That's not an answer. People want stateless so bad, they carry that contraption around that the person in front of them on the plane reclines their seat and the whole thing collapses to the ground and falls into 100 pieces. And they're collecting and reassembling everything. Like, that's how badly they want a stateless device. So Chrome OS, it's stateless, but with the laptop form factor. It's got the full catalog of Android applications that it can run, and it has a real desktop browser. That's a big thing too. If you ever tried to do the iPad Pro laptop replacements, yeah, spend a day surfing the web on that. There's a reason why you use the native applications for everything, because the mobile browser is not a desktop browser. So Chromebook, I think, actually is going to have a pretty big footprint that we're going to see in the enterprise. And again, users, we as IT want to support users regardless of what they want. So that's part of our estate. And then finally, part of our estate is this web and sort of SaaS cloud applications that, again, are all over the place that we're using for so much stuff nowadays. But now let's look at, so this is what our user landscape looks like. And by the way, I mentioned this to some people earlier. This is the user landscape because it's 2018. This is not the user landscape because of millennials. So I'm not a millennial, but I am a millennial defender. It is not millennials who want to work their way and have to have things just how they like it. It's everybody. I'm 40, and I use an iPhone 10 and a Mac. If you told me that I had a plastic Dell domain-joined Windows machine and every app I had was Windows, I wouldn't work there either. So I don't think it's a millennial problem. I think it's a human issue. We know what technology is available. We know what technology we have access to at home, and we want to use that at work, which is why this sort of is the entire state we have to deal with. Now, from the IT standpoint, how are we managing all this? Well, Windows VDI and RDSH, okay, that's Citrix XenApp Zen Desktop or VMware Horizon. The Windows, the iOS and Android is, AirWatch, again, Zen Mobile, whatever that's going to be. Windows Physical is done by SCCM. The Mac OS is done by Jamf. Chrome OS is done by the Google Chrome Enterprise admin. And all these web applications are done by God knows what, because they're all different. So some of them have SAML, some have Kerberos, some have nothing, some have their own kinds of things. This is the landscape of what we have to deal with today within IT. And everyone's dealing with some sort of version of this. And so the idea is that, this is unsustainable. Every one of these products has its own backend architecture and its own systems and its own databases and licenses and training and ways of doing things. And users want to use this, then that, and there's no flexibility. Our boss says, hey, how are we doing on WannaCry? And we have to look across all these different systems. It's a hodgepodge. So the idea, of course, from VMware is that, all these green rectangles that are little and not connected become replaced with a giant green rectangle called VMware Workspace ONE. And this is what VMware is selling. And so before I joined VMware, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, okay, Workspace ONE replaces all this stuff. Right. I really feel like I've heard this before and I never liked it. Because before Workspace ONE, I thought we already had a suite that was integrated and did everything. It was called Horizon Suites or Horizon Application Suite or something like that. And didn't Citrix even already have a Workspace Suite 5 years ago? And hell, didn't Citrix have a Citrix Access Suite 15 years ago? Which was also supposed to be the one thing overall that managed everything. So I really feel like I've been hearing this, one vendor has one overall suite to manage everything for a long time. And I didn't really believe it. Now there's portions of it that are believable. For VMware to say, yeah, Workspace ONE, we can manage VDI, I'm on board. Horizon is a real thing. We can do RDSH. They've been doing that for a while. I definitely believe VMware when they say, yeah, we can manage VDI and RDSH. I believe VMware when they say we can manage iOS and Android, because AirWatch has been doing that a long time. AirWatch can even broker connections to manage the Chrome OS. I believe that as well. I also believe that VMware via Identity Manager can manage and broker all your connections back into your web and cloud and SaaS applications, via SAML brokering and the app catalogs and all this kind of stuff. I believe that. It's this physical thing that is really, really hard. Everyone has always ignored this physical thing. Because again, SCCM came out in 1994. There's some early challengers to it. LANDesk, Altera's Client Management Suite, ZenWorks with the Z from Novell. But Microsoft's been dominating this space for a long, long time. So when VMware says, we're gonna manage everything, I'm like, look, dude, everything means physical. And they say, yeah, we're doing physical too. I'm like, okay. And they said, no, we're doing it. We're using Windows 10 Modern Management. And I'm like, oh. Huh. Because with Windows 10 Modern Management, this is where Microsoft builds in sort of APIs to manage Windows via the new sort of mobile style. Modern Management is great. You don't have to be domain joined to get policy updates. You can go over the internet. All the mobile tools you're using, AirWatch, Mobile Iron, not Zen Mobile, but Intune can manage that. That's fine. But Modern Management has some big limitations. There's an article on Search Enterprise Desktop, the Tech Target site by Tim Mangan, just 2 weeks ago about be careful of the perils of Modern Management. You cannot deploy old applications. You cannot deploy classic Windows applications via Modern Management. So only Windows Universal Platform, the Microsoft Store apps. Quick, name a Microsoft Store app. There we go. Microsoft Office? Nope. If all of our applications were Microsoft Store applications, we wouldn't have this whole problem we have in the first place. The classic Windows applications are the ones that they're going to be classic forever because they need admin rights and they need this DLL right here and they need this registry key and they talk to this printer via this OLE interface and all that sort of thing. So the idea that you can use Modern Management to replace SCCM, I didn't believe it. And when I was talking to VMware before I hired, they said, no, but we've been working on Windows 10 for a long time. we've extended the interface so you actually can deploy any Windows application via modern management architecture. And I'm like, right. Look, if you're telling me you did that, that means you have to do package installation command lines, package removal command lines, conditional branching for different command line parameters. You have to look at exit codes and have conditional branching based on exit codes, package prerequisites, checking for free disk space. And they're like, yeah, we do all that stuff here. It is right here in the console. And I'm like, all right, that's actually pretty good. But what about registry keys now? The modern management interface does not use GPOs. It uses configuration settings, which Microsoft has exposed. There's a lot of them. There's like 1,200 settings that are exposed via these modern management APIs, which is great. But it's 1,200 settings versus your GPOs. How many GPOs are there? How many registry keys are there? How many snowflakes are there? I mean, you can create a registry key for anything you want. Every application has its own, and we need to be able to manage all this kind of stuff. So if you can't deploy any registry key, again, it's not a CCM replacement. It's not a GPO replacement. But again, to VMware, extended that and said, no, we absolutely can. We can push out any registry key, any GPO in the modern way, with cloud-based infrastructure instantaneously. This is not. Remember with GPOs and domains. I mean, the domain is 30 years old. The GPOs are over 20 years old. I mean, GPOs were invented. Remember, when was your first NT5 beta? 97. So GPOs have been around a long, long time. The problem with the GPO, they're older than Wi-Fi. Like, think about that for a second. GPOs are older than Wi-Fi. So, if I've domain connected back in New York and I fly here, I can use my laptop for weeks and never actually log into the domain through the VPN. I don't get my GPO updates. I hope you didn't have anything critical you had to push out. That's insane in 2018. The mobile doesn't work that way, and neither does modern management. Again, this is not a VMware thing. Microsoft fixes that via modern management, where, it should be, if I'm at Skipple and I'm waiting for my suitcase to come around and I open my laptop and get online, the instant I'm online, I should have the policies that apply to me once it should be instantaneous. And that's what modern management can do. This is why everyone loves modern management. But again, if you're not able to do any registry setting in any GPO, it's not actually useful in the enterprise. So when VMware started going down that path and said, no, we are taking modern management and extending so it actually can replace SCCM. The same story I could tell about on the Mac as far as doing actual Mac management and pushing out Mac packages, DMG, PKG files. I was skeptical of both of these, and they explained all this, and I'm like, no, this is actually pretty good. To all you guys who are taking pictures just now, take a picture of this slide, please. With all the thumbs up, because it's not going to be explanatory. It's not going to come across in a tweet. So I look at all this, and I'm like, no, this is what we need. If it's going to be truly one platform, it needs to actually, legitimately, natively support all the native capabilities and applications and policies across all the devices. So this is the idea with Workspace ONE, taking the same slide and kind of reconfiguring it, so squashing all the boxes in the bottom. Workspace ONE gives you all the things that you would expect. It handles security and identity, the single sign-on and multi-factor authentication and everything. It does the provisioning and access, so the conditional access into applications and data and setting up which users are using which applications. All the configuration and personalization of the environment by the user, and of course all the data and all the files, because that's just as important as applications. So all the stuff Workspace ONE is doing across the entire estate of all the devices, all the platforms, in a very modern way. And this is what Workspace ONE is today. So before I joined VMware, all this stuff, like I wasn't, VMware's ability to do the Windows 10 modern management and extend upon the limitations, that all happened while I was living in a van with a flip phone. So that was all news to me. So when that happened, I was pretty excited. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. You guys are doing it right. Let me know how it can help. I want on board. Yes, I like it. Applause for them, from me, not you. And they said, no, wait, whoa. This is not, we didn't tell you the good stuff yet. This is just what we're doing today. This isn't, we didn't even start talking about where we're going with this. And that's, for me, was the kind of real eye-opener where I'm like, oh, I'm intrigued. So taking Workspace ONE and just kind of like squashing it down again here. We have Workspace ONE as sort of the universal platform across all these devices and applications and data sources. As part of Workspace ONE, we have VMware Identity Manager, which is sort of our identity as a service or our identity broker. Identity Manager is not the identity provider. We're fronting your existing Active Directory or Azure Active Directory or any LDAP or Okta or Citrix or wherever your accounts live. But Identity Manager is what's providing the content catalogs and the application catalogs and the self-selection and powering the portals and all that, and the SAML brokering to web applications and all that kind of stuff. So this is all fine. This is stuff that has existed in some form or another for a couple of years. But the next thing that is really interesting to me is looking at intelligence on top of this. So Workspace ONE intelligence. And the idea is everything we have in here, all these applications and all of the platforms, we're collecting data on them. All the systems do this. SCCM collects all sorts of metrics on patch levels and applications and services running and memory usage and CPU. AirWatch or Mobile Irons and mobile collects the same types of data on mobile devices. Jamf does it on Mac. The identity broker does it based on where the users are. What if we took all that data and put it into one location that becomes Workspace ONE Intelligence and includes the VMware Identity Manager part of that? And now we can do some pretty interesting things with this, because again, it's fundamentally we're not collecting any data that hasn't been collected by IT in the past at all. So this isn't. People say, oh, there's a big workers' council issue we have to deal with, or like privacy. This is all the same data that your SCCM and all your products are collecting today. You can shut off any specific channels that you want, by the way. But the idea is we take all this stuff, and now what can we do with that? There's all the standard things. There's dashboards. There's reports, notification engine. There's action and automation engines. But the real interesting thing for me is over here with the APIs and the SDK. So the APIs allow you, within your company, partners for your customers, or other third-party vendors to plug in to this intelligence data lake and really do some useful things with this. There's a whole lot of things happening in this space, and I can just give you some examples in the last couple of minutes I have. We announced something called the Workspace ONE Trust Network. Now, to be clear, intelligence is real product shipping today. Workspace ONE Trust Network is not a real product yet. This is something we've announced but not yet shipping. With Trust Network, we have gone to the security ISV community and invited them to use our APIs to make their products work for our joint customers. So a bunch of vendors have signed up so far. It's McAfee, Carbon Black, CrowdStrike, Symantec, Lookout, Cylance, and Netscope. Some of these are endpoint protection vendors, some are behavior analytics, some are next-gen firewall, some are what else? Cloud access, security brokers. And the idea is that they can plug into that intelligence data lake. So number one, a lot of these vendors have agents that run on all your devices anyway and sort of collect all their own data. Right off the bat, they may not need to have agents anymore because we have all the data we're collecting already. Now, some of these still will use agents because depending on what they do and how they work, some of them work that way. But we can do things like, oh, you're subscribing to a global malware threat protection subscription that has probes all over the internet and detects malware and how it's sort of growing in certain areas. And we can actually see, oh, there's a user logging on with this device that doesn't have the patch that's needed to protect against that in a geo where it's active. Maybe we block their access to all the applications until they get that patch updated. Or maybe we only give them access to a remote Windows 7 or Windows 10 desktop until they update their device. Or maybe we let them use the applications, but we route all data through a special VPN connection that's inspecting it more closely. Because intelligence is part of Workspace ONE. So in addition to all the data flowing up into it, it has command and control capabilities to push down changes in policy and configuration updates. And because it's using a modern architecture, not something like GPOs and domains, the second any one of these devices hits the internet, it's got the new policies if there's one of them that's available. So that's something we're doing at the Workspace ONE Trust Network. Another thing we've announced is we bought a company called E8 Security. E8 is one of these vendors. It's called a UEBA vendor, real term. User and entity behavior analytics. Again, this is sort of the AI machine learning type thing where they go against this data store, against the data lake, and can look for anomalies due to either rogue agents or due to malware or infections or things like that. And again, they're able to act on it and then trigger alerts, push out changes, whatever that may be. The last little thing also I mention here is we have another thing. It's called the mobile flows. This is something that's shipping today, but is just starting to scratch the surface of what capabilities are available. Mobile flows allows you to create connectors into various backend business systems. All these connectors are open source. They're in the VMware GitHub account. We've pre-created, I don't know, a bunch of different ones that you can just take and customize for yourself or do whatever. And the idea with mobile flows is historically, within IT and with a platform like Workspace ONE, we have a very great visibility in what's happening on the devices. Think about it. We know everything about what happens on a device. We know everything about what a user is doing, everything about their data and files, everything about their locations, but we don't know anything about what happens within the business apps. I know that this user is using Firefox.exe on a website called Salesforce.com for 17 hours a week. I know this user on this iPhone is using a application called Salesforce 19 hours a week. But I don't really know what they're doing inside there. And so mobile flows is allowing us to build these connectors that tie into these various backend business systems and then pull out the contextually relevant data in order to provide a better experience for the users. In this day, and the mobile flows today is very early. We can do things like rendering what we call an action card inside an email client. So if you have a Concur, I must approve this thing, instead of clicking the link, going over to Concur, approve it in Concur, going back into the email, we can just put the approve or deny button right inside your email client, and you can approve it right from there. That's a very simple, almost party trick example, but it's, again, when you start looking at taking the actual context of these big back-end business systems, which don't have to be cloud-based. You can go to anything with an API you can hook into. You can write these connectors in whatever language you want. So you can hook into a SQL Server or Oracle or AS300, 400 through a SNA gateway. The idea with these mobile flow services, by the way, is these also become a set of microservices. And these microservices allow us to really take the same context that we already have for devices and users and applications and content and data and tie into the backend business systems and allow you to build different applications or your customers to build different applications and present things in device native ways. So, at the end of the day, users are using devices, they want to get the capabilities of that device in the regular native way. If you have a Windows laptop, you don't want to launch applications via a web portal. If you get notifications of something that's happening in the back end, you don't want to have to launch a separate app to receive notifications or go to a website to see notifications. Windows has notifications built in. Mac has notifications built in. iOS, Android, it's all built in. You want to use these things in their native ways. And in order to do that, you have to be able to pull together all the context-aware data from the back end as far as the user, the security, the device, the applications, and what's happening in the back-end business systems. So that's kind of what we're thinking for direction of this. The whole picture here, to summarize, from about the middle on down, this is really where we are today. This is where most organizations are. Most organizations are supporting all these different platforms. They really want to try to get a little bit ahead of things and not have to react to every single device that comes in and have all these different platforms and architectures. Moving forward, though, as more of that comes in place and we can roll more up to intelligence, we want to continue to allow our users to the applications that we use more and more to pull contextually relevant information out of those so we can present that to the users and whatever devices they're using wherever they're working. So I think that, like I said, intelligence is shipping today, mobile flows is shipping today. These are both very early in terms of, we're in the WinFrame 1.0 day, or 1.7, 1.6 days, whatever that was. This is the early days of this. And I think, in the next 3, 4, 5, and beyond years, we're going to see a lot more interesting things happening as we really understand applications, while not forgetting all the devices and security and context that we need on the lower end. So that's our general idea for where we think EUC is going. This is why I work at VMware. I look at this and I feel like I can understand the next 10 years of EUC and how that's going to end up. My job at VMware, as I said, I'm still blogging. I'm using LinkedIn as a blogging platform, and I'm not just, I'm doing VDI versus RDSH, peak VDI. I'm sort of blogging about different topics. LinkedIn, by the way, requires that you have a picture, a photo with your blog posts. And if you don't provide your own photo, they give you a really dumb one, like a picture of a newspaper or something. So I've got an iPad with a pencil. I'm that guy. So I'm drawing my own pictures. I also just started a website that just holds links. It's called bmad.com. Do not confuse with Brian Madden. There's no original content on here. This just links to everything else that I do. So the blogs I write in VMware or LinkedIn or podcasts, I did the Login TechCast, is that what it's called, today. So that'll go live in a couple weeks. That'll be on bmad.com. So that's where the RSS feed is, where you can follow everything that I'm doing and I'm writing. I started my own podcast, which is called Brian Madden's Unnamed vEUC Podcast. And our first episode is just done about Windows 10 Modern Management. So that's what I'm kind of up to, so far. Thank you so much for your time. And I guess that's it. I think there might be Q&A. I'm not really sure what happens next. I think beer is involved. So that's the gist. Thank you so much for giving me an hour of your time today.